My name is Uyen, and I am the founder of Fierce Consulting. What I do is I help leaders create productive, happy teams with my leadership training experiences. I work with usually large corporates like the Bank of America, the BBC, and the North Face. And what they do is they bring me in to design and deliver bespoke learning activities to meet a specific need in their organizations. So today I've been invited by Drew to talk to you about stakeholder engagement, or as the title suggests, understanding others in order to get ahead. Now, given that you are entrepreneurs, founders, leaders in your own right, I don't need to sell the idea of how important relationships are to what we are trying to achieve. However, what I have personally experienced is when things are busy, when you are stressed out, your dedication, your focus on relationships and connections can wane, right? And it's understandable, we're human. And as a consequence, sometimes the things we're trying to achieve can suffer as a consequence. So the two tools I want to share with you today just help keep me on the straight and narrow, just helps me be a little bit more structured and thoughtful with the way I approach my relationships to make sure I'm always kind of turning up to my best as much as possible. This is by no means a very passive session. I'm very much about interactive work, so please have a pen and piece of paper at hand. In fact, if you can, have several pieces of paper, and ideally big ones, so A4 at least. So the first tool I wanted to share with you is stakeholder mapping. I love this tool because it basically takes you from zero to having a relatively coherent stakeholder strategy. And for that reason, I share a lot of it with the people I work with. The first step of stakeholder management is to brainstorm all of the people involved. Right. And the reason why we do this brainstorming step is because very often when you're holding it all in your head, you will forget one or two possibly critical individuals and forget to engage them early enough in a process or an endeavor, and because you're bringing them late, you get their views late, or maybe they feel disenfranchised, all of that bad stuff. So we brainstorm early on in the process in order to try to catch all of the names where possible. When we do catch the names, we give them scores from 0 to 10, 10's the highest, for power and interest. Okay, so if you look on my chart, power is a person's level of power over your endeavor, your initiative, your project. Yeah, and they could be powerful because of their position, their role, their level of expertise, their influence, etc., etc. All right, so you score them 0 to 10. Then you think about the level of interest that they have in what you're trying to do. Okay, and this could be vested interest, they could be responsible, they could be a beneficiary, they could lose out as a consequence of what you're doing. Maybe they're a competitor and they would lose if you won that contract. They're very interested in what you're doing then, right? So what you do is you think of all of the names involved with what you're getting on with, and then you map the names according to their interest and power. Right, so here's an example. Here's one of my imaginary stakeholders, Rahul Jonah. And we've given him 5 out of 10 for interest and 6 out of 10 for power. Okay, so unsurprisingly, Rahul sits roughly in the middle of my sheet. Then what you do is you keep on mapping all of the names out, and what you end up is looking something that looks a little bit like this, all these sorts of names. So I'm going to pause for a moment and just give you a go at trying it yourself. So draw the axes, the horizontal one, 0 to 10 for interest, the vertical axis going up and down, labeled power, also scored from 0 to 10. Just give it some names. Think of a project, maybe a client you're working with, your business partnership you're developing, a new collaboration or product or service you're working on. Maybe even something in your personal life. Maybe you're a school governor or a volunteer and you need to manage stakeholders there. I'll give you about a minute just to have a go at mapping out some names. All right, about 10 seconds left. Doesn't matter if you don't get all the names out, no big deal. You can always go back to this sheet and continue after this session's finished. Okay. So hopefully you've had a moment to jot down some names, and it'll look a little bit like what I've got on the screen. Now, the chances are, if you're like me, you'll have way more names than you have time to deal with. So what do? Well, we need some system to prioritize so that you can spend your time on where it matters, and maybe dedicate less energy and time to individuals that maybe aren't going to move the dial for you. So if you look on the chart, I have divided my space into 4 rectangles using those dotted lines. So I'd like you to do the same on your sheets, please. Doesn't matter if you cross through a name, no big deal. And the top right, people who are going to feature in the top right corner, very interested, very powerful, unsurprisingly, they're going to be your managed closely. These are your highest priority stakeholders. So you should be spending the majority of your time on these people, probably on a one-on-one basis, and they may even sit on some sort of oversight committee, depending on what you're doing. If you're delivering a big project for a client, there might be a committee to oversee that work. Top left, not particularly interested, but pretty powerful. We call these your keep satisfieds. So they tend to only get involved if they see something that they are particularly worried about. So for them, it's about understanding what they care about, what worries them, and making sure that they are content. Yeah, so they don't like to be blindsided. They don't like to be surprised. It's about keeping them in the loop, but not overwhelming them with information, because remember, they're not overly interested. Bottom right, these are your keep informs, also known as your cheerleaders. These are people who are really interested but can't really do much for you. They're not exceptionally powerful. They're your advocates, and depending on what you're doing, you might want to get involved, might want to get them involved in sort of low risk ways. So if you were doing a rebrand for your business, maybe you would invite them to comment on the latest fonts or colors that you've chosen for yourself. Then finally, bottom left are your monitors. So low interest, low power. A lot of time you wouldn't do much with this population. If you're doing on a big project, maybe you would do the occasional contact, a periodic email. With them, it's just about keeping them kind of little eye on the corner, making sure that they stay on your radar and you don't get blindsided by something. Okay, so we've thought of all the names, we've brainstormed it out. I like to talk to other people in my sphere of influence, my associates, my clients, to make sure I've captured all the names. Then we've prioritized it, so now you've got a sense of where you should be spending your time. Then what I like to do is go a little bit deeper and do a bit of analysis on the individuals. So here's a really simple example for you to get an idea of what I'm talking about. So here I've got 3 stakeholders, and it's to do with a hypothetical, so imaginary client that I'm working with. Okay, so here are the characters. The first person on the top right is my main client contact. She's the person who hired me in. She's very vested in this project and very supportive. So I've given her a pretty high level of interest and, you know, a pretty high level of power as well. Bottom right is the client project manager. So she is very supportive of the project as well, but not very powerful. She holds a junior position in the organization. She's supportive, but a little bit needy. So it takes up a lot of my time with managing her. And then the final person on the top left, not very interested at all, pretty much at 0, but very powerful. This is the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer of the client, not interested in my project. She's currently blocking phase 2 funding for my work, so I can't proceed until she is happy with what I'm doing. So you can see 3 very different individuals, all related to this one project. And so you will see similar patterns maybe with what you are doing as well. So what I do once I've done that analysis, well, I want to map it to some sort of action, because there is no point doing all this work, doing all this thinking, if you're not going to make any changes as a consequence. So what I then do is then I map it onto a simple action plan to address any issues that have been flagged as a consequence of this analysis. So here's my very simple action plan. I've got my stakeholder column, I've got my objectives, so what am I trying to achieve, and then the specific action that I'm going to hold myself accountable for. So the first row is my main contact, the lady who hired me, and my objective there is to make sure she's looked after and that she feels in control, because obviously she's sticking her neck out hiring me. So the action with her is making sure that she's apprised of all that's going on. So I've set up some weekly meetings, and I'm going to design a reporting dashboard for her to make sure that she understands all the different elements of the project as it develops, and she's in control. For the project manager, the PM, that's the second row, my objective is to reduce the number of phone calls. So clearly in this hypothetical example, I'm getting a lot of phone calls from this client. So for her, I've set up a Slack channel to coordinate work. Yeah, so those of you who may not know Slack, it's an online platform. You don't really need to know the details, but it's just a way to make communication smoother and less face-to-face at the same time, and just kind of more simpler for this project. And then finally, the big kahuna. So the chief financial officer, who is not convinced about my work, clearly the objective there is to make sure that she is on side, understands the return on investment, the benefits of the business of doing this work. So for her, I'm going to do some background research into what she's about, and we can talk a little bit more about how we might do that later. And then I'm going to present with my main client contacts, and to kind of convince her that this is a fabulous idea, which of course it is. Right. So you can see how I've gone from full brainstorm, all of the names, to prioritization and a bit of analysis, a bit of a deep dive and soul searching about what's going on, and then mapping it over to specific actions which I can then take away, and measure myself by. Okay, so that's stakeholder mapping. The second tool I wanted to share with you, which is related to what we were talking about with that chief financial officer who's not so keen on me, or maybe the project, I should say, maybe make it not so personal. This is a great tool to do some deeper analysis into a specific individual, and it's called an empathy map or an empathy canvas. Okay, so this is a really simplified version of it. I'll show you what the full one looks like later. It was developed by a chap called Dave Gray at an organization called Explain. Definitely check out their website and his work. It's a fabulous way to methodically break down your understanding of another person. Yeah, it's commonly used for marketers. So if you want to understand your target client, and for us, being able to understand an individual is the first step to being able to work really effectively with them, right? If you don't understand them, how are you going to be able to negotiate, influence, collaborate with them? I like to use this tool for my clients, for business partners I work with, associates, people I want to collaborate with, for competitors, and even regulators or authorities that you're working with. So perhaps the work you do is governed by an authority, like a professional body, etc. Maybe there's an individual that's signing off on stuff that you're doing. This would be a great way to kind of peel back the layers of the onion and get a sense of what they are about, to be able to have a better, more effective working relationship with them. Okay, so grab that fresh piece of paper, and we're going to have a go at creating this image, but in a simplified way. Right, so if you imagine, you don't have to draw a full head. What it really is just a circle, a pretty big circle in the center of your A4 piece of paper. So do that now. Big circle in the middle of a fresh piece of A4 paper. And then you've got 4 diagonal lines spreading out from that head, from that circle. And then you've got 2 more lines, one shooting straight out of the fellow's head, and then one shooting out of his nose, parallel or horizontal with the bottom of your sheet. Yeah. Okay. Don't worry, you don't need to be a super artist. This is just gonna help structure the analysis as we do it together. Okay. So I'd like you to think of an individual that you would just like to understand better. And it could be client, competitor, even partner, depending on how it's been going this lockdown. Jokes aside, just someone you want to develop a better relationship with, and maybe you don't always gel or don't always click. So write that person's name down on that top left, that area where I've highlighted it in blue. And then just make a few notes on the situation they are in. What is their role? What is their responsibility? So if it's a client, what's their job title? What are their key responsibilities? What do they have to deliver as a consequence of this role? I'll give you just a short few moments to just jot down some ideas. Okay, ready to move on? Don't worry if you want to write reams more. This is being recorded. You can listen to it again as many times as you wish and pause and take your time that this analysis deserves. Second area, top right, that I've highlighted in darker blue. What is it that they need to do? What do they need to do, this person? What do they need to do differently? Do they need to change something? Yeah. What job is it that they need to get done, right? If you are an electrician, okay, maybe one of your clients needs to get a rewiring job. That's what they need to do differently. What decisions do they need to make? Maybe they are at the crossroads of something. If you are a marketing consultant and your client or target individual is at the crossroads between going one strategy and another, maybe that's the decision they need to get done. And how will we know they were successful? So how are they measuring success? Is it revenue? Is it sales? Is it going to be profits? Is it going to be individuals helped? What is it? How are we measuring their success? So I'll give you a few seconds just to begin thinking about this. Remember, you can always come back and complete this later. All right, ready to move to the third section. So writing in this little trapezium, I guess it's a trapezium almost. What is it do they see? What do they see? So what do they see in their marketplace? What do they see in their immediate environment? What do they see others saying and doing? What are they watching and reading? So where are they getting their information from? Is it social media? Is it newspapers? What is it? What do they see? So in my example of the CFO, maybe she reads the Harvard Business Review and she is getting a lot of information that is not supportive of the work that I do. I don't know. I'm just making it up. I don't know if that's the case. Or perhaps she sees the financial management information in her organization showing that this sort of work isn't a priority for them right now, or so she believes. Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the fourth. In orange, what do they say? What have we heard this person say, or what can we imagine them saying? So sometimes the person we're trying to understand better is someone we have not met yet, or is an imaginary person. What can we imagine them saying in that case? Or if we have met them, what have we heard them say? What sort of decisions have they made? What sort of phrases do they use? Which gives them a bit of an insight into what's going on in their minds. What phrases or sentences stick out for you? What do they say? All right, ready to move on? And I do appreciate this is a real whistle-stop tour, so please don't worry. You can always come back and complete this in your own time. That middle bit at the bottom, what do they do? What do they do right now? What do they do today? What behavior have we observed? What can we imagine them doing? Yeah. Now, some of these questions are going to be more relevant than others, depending on the person or situation you're seeking to analyze. right? So if your business does something very physical, then, the probably what do they do is much more pertinent than maybe, another question. Or if your business is oriented around advice and consulting, then perhaps their physical behaviors is not so important, but perhaps the decisions that they make or the behaviors they demonstrate and how they engage with others, that is more pertinent for you. So just take this away and adapt it for your own needs. The idea is just asking prompting questions for you to just get under their skin a little bit, just to understand them a bit more. Something that's really good doing this is to do it with other people, right? Because you will have one specific perspective, but when you bring in other people, they will have a completely different perspective, right? And that's the beauty of a diverse team and group of people, because you get that mixture of opinions and you get a much more balanced, rich analysis. Okay. Just behind their head, behind them by the ear. What do they hear? So what are they hearing others say? What are they hearing from their friends? What are they hearing from colleagues? What are they hearing secondhand? Or what can you imagine them hearing? So yeah, sometimes there's a little bit of overlap. So sometimes the way I interpret what do they see, what do they hear, it's a little bit of an overlap. That's okay. If you've got nothing to add on a section, it doesn't matter. This is all about just prompting your thinking. It doesn't have to be perfect. So perhaps in this case, my CFO is listening very much to their partner who's had a really terrible experience with this type of service. Yeah. And so maybe in the past, that's been an issue. So perhaps she's even more concerned than average. But it's only by understanding that background that I can then even get close to addressing the concerns, right? Okay. Final one, big circle in the middle, is kind of their thoughts and feelings. And it's hard to know, frankly, because we can never really tell what's going on inside another person. But to the best of your ability, what are their pains and their gains? So pains are, what do they fear? What are their frustrations? What are their anxieties? What keeps them up at night? And then their gains, what do they hope for? What are their wants, needs, and dreams and hopes? And then any other thoughts and feelings that might motivate their behavior. So they might have fixed beliefs, they might have certain cultural or upbringing aspects to their personality, which leads them to certain behaviors, leads them to certain choices and perspectives. And I think this one is a huge one, right? You could spend all day for most people on this, but just to the best of your ability, based on your gut feeling, what you've observed, what you hear from other people, other trusted advisors. What are you seeing? What do you think? What do you think they think and feel? I'll give you a moment before we wrap up. All right, we'll move on in about 10 seconds and just finish off your sentence. So I really like to use this tool when I'm just frustrated with someone, when I'm just not getting them, when they're saying one thing and I'm saying another. Sit down with the empathy canvas, just have them, sometimes it can be quick, 5 minutes, sometimes it could be an hour. Just really seek to understand their perspective, because only then can you truly seek to connect, right? So here's some questions which might be useful just to elicit more insights. So what new connections did you make? And I don't mean connections like new relationships. I just mean like, connecting this piece of information to that piece of information. Sometimes on the canvas, you can draw a circle around one statement you've written with another. Oh, maybe that's related to this. Interesting. What else did you notice? Very often when you do this analysis, you're like, oh, yeah, I never thought about that. As a consequence of this analysis, is there any change in the strategy you're taking with this individual, right? And then finally, what would you like to say to them the next time you meet? Okay, so this is for people you know. If you're having a Zoom session or you're emailing them, is there any change in the way that you want to communicate with them or the information you choose to share with them? Give you like half a minute just to jot down some ideas. And it's the actions that really make a difference, right? Doing the analysis is great to bring out those insights, but nothing is going to change for you in real life if you don't take action as a consequence. Okay. So here is the full canvas. This is taken off the website gamestorming.com. I've got the hyperlink on the screen for you here. They actually create a PDF version which you can download yourself and fill in yourself. And it's a great tool. Okay, so that was me, Uyen Vo, founder of Fierce Consulting. I help leaders build productive and happy teams. If you know anybody that is looking for a good trainer to help them deal with specific issues in their team, please do send them my way. And other than that, thank you so much for your time and attention. Stay safe and keep in touch. I can't wait to have a discussion on whatever insights you guys have generated as a consequence of this analysis.